Hello, curling fans, and welcome back to another edition of the Broom Brothers, the official podcast of the curling group and the Grand Slam of Curling. And honestly, no time for an elaborate introduction because we have so much curling news to cover. It is insane. So I will just very simply introduce my Broom brother, my partner in crime, Robbie Doherty.
Dude, we are cooking. What a week in curling. The Brier's over. The Olympics just finished. Scotty's right before that. Good day to be a curling fan. Good day to be a podcast host.
I'll say good. I mean, just good week to be a curling fan, really. Lots going. Good couple weeks. And we got more coming. Women's World starts in like 2 days as you're listening to this episode. So then Men's Worlds goes right after that. And then it's Rock League, baby. So yeah, we've got a ton of stuff to get through.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for the new Summer Super League to be announced coming up or something. So might as well just do it 12 months. But
no break, man. You get no break at all.
No rest for the curlers.
Oh, my God.
Great.
It is great. It is great. It's been a phenomenal curling season, and there are still more stories to be written. Before we get to all of that, a reminder, this episode is brought to you by Goldline Curling. And Robbie, it's an exciting time for Goldline Curling because the month of March is their end of season sale. I don't know if you've been on over to goldlinecurling.com yet, but if you haven't, if you're listening to this, and this goes for you too, Robbie, head on over to the website. They've got a ton of great deals, free shipping on Canadian orders over $150. So no excuse not to give that little shopping cart a fill up. You know, get that over 150, you get free shipping. There's a bunch of shoes on sale. There's pants on sale. I'm looking at it right now. I mean, like literally almost every shoe is on sale. I'm not joking. I'm looking at it right now. So this is a fantastic time. I know it's the end of the curling season. You're thinking, I'm just going to put this stuff away till the fall. But guess what? The price of the brick is going to go up in the fall, as they say, Robbie. So head on over to goldcurling.com, grab some stuff.
And to answer your question, John, my family, the last weekend, not the one that just happened, but like 2 weekends ago, we took a little family trip up to Mill River Resort, which is on the western part of PEI.
Beautiful.
Great spot to take the family, nice hotel, beautiful restaurant, and then a lot of activities for the kids, but also the home site of the brand new West Prince Curling Club on the site of the Mill River. So I was with my wife's family, and we booked a sheet of ice. They're not a curling family. Took them out. My wife had tried curling once about 8 years ago, liked it quite a bit, hadn't thrown rocks since, threw rocks that Saturday, fell in love with it again, said she wants to play next year. So guess where I went for a surprise this week? Goldline Curling. Ordered shoes. Yep. Delivered right to my door. They asked what kind I wanted. I just said same kind as Rachel Homan. So I think that's the momentum rush. And man,
Jill Doherty is about to be the next Rachel Homan, and this you heard it here first from Robbie.
The sad part is, like, she could be like she's built for a curler. She's got crazy strong quads and ridiculous core strength, and she was supernatural at it. Wants to keep going. And hey, Goldline, I placed the order. It was on my doorstep 2 days later. Jillian's happy as a pig in shit, and we're all ready for the mixed league next year. So big thanks to Goldline for that.
There you go.
Bringing our family closer together.
We love to bring the family close together. Nothing brings the family closer together like a sale. So head on over to goldlinecurling.com. And that's for the whole month of March. So you don't have to rush. You're listening to this episode March 11th, 12th, 15th, 16th, whatever. You still got multiple weeks. So check it out. goldlinecurling.com. All right, Robbie, we obviously have to start with the big curling news of the day, which is that Matt Dunstone finally gets it across the line, his third Brier final, his first victory. You could see how much it meant to him yesterday. I know you were watching. Tell me about your thoughts on Matt Dunstone taking home the Brier championship.
Well, I got to admit something. There was a lot of onions being chopped in the Doherty house last night. Not just me, but my curling wife as well. No, the two of us watched the game, and it's just one of those moments. You see it in sports how many times where you just say, finally. They deserve it. They've been after this for so long. Matt himself, well, a few of them have been, but specifically Colton and Matt have been so close so many times. When it was a 2 out of 3, Matt was runner-up, and boom. There it is. Finally got his win. Earlier in the week, obviously it was the Gushue show and rightfully so, his final Brier in his hometown. And Matt was just one of those teams, kind of flew under the radar all week. Faced a little bit of adversity, but bounced back. They took a loss? Was it to Koe in the round robin?
Mm-hmm.
And but seemed to bounce back. Just kind of did their job. And we've talked about that team how many times now, John? About how hard they work, the effort they put in. And it's kind of like one of those things where you say it will come, and you know it's going to happen. Finally, it came. I said to my wife before he threw that last one, Matt, because I remember when Matt won his first Grand Slam and he couldn't get through the interview.
Yeah.
He was so emotional. And I said, this is going to be one of the best Brier wins ever, just because of the reaction and the celebration. And boy, oh boy, it delivered. He earned it. He deserved it. That whole team, they just worked so hard. They put the time in. They had a couple devastating losses, obviously, as we mentioned, Brier finals, but also the trials final.
Trials final too. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So if there's ever a team, as a Canadian that you're happy to see represent us and wear the maple leaf, it's a good news story to see that it's Team Dunstone. I messaged them after the game to congratulate them, and also, unfortunately, had to tell them that I wasn't available for Worlds if they were interested in picking me up, because I have the PEI Club Provincials that week.
Yeah.
But, it may be another year. But in all seriousness, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't cheering for them in that final, just based on the past couple of years. And good dudes, good players, well-deserved.
Yeah, I agree with you in that I think they definitely flew under the radar this week, and I think it suited them well. I think obviously Brad Gushue was a huge story, but then, of course, Brad Jacobs was a story coming back off the Olympic gold medal. They had about 2 days rest before flipping back to St. John's and getting into another pressure cooker. And then obviously Kevin Koe turning back the clock emerged as a storyline. So you're right. Like, it was funny. We got to midweek, and I said to my wife, like, I hadn't watched a ton because I was still in recovery mode from the Olympics. And so it was a little bit more of a, like, I'll watch it when it's on, but I'm not kind of going out of my way to watch it. Like with the playoffs, obviously I did, but with the round robin, it was kind of like, yeah, keeping my eye on things, not watching every game. But even with that, we got like halfway through the week and I was like, I haven't seen Matt Dunstone's team throw a single rock. Like, I think they had one TSN feature game and that was it. Like, it was just, there were too many other storylines for TSN to pick up on. Obviously, they wanted to show as many Gushue games as possible. Don't blame them for that. But yeah, it was just one of those. They kind of flew under the radar. Then they had that loss to Koe. And at that time, I think Koe and Matt were both 5-0 when they played, but it was still a little bit of like, but the wheels are going to come off for Kevin at some point here because, and that's no offense to Kevin and his team. It's just, that is what we have seen over the last few years, that they haven't quite had a full good event. So I hadn't really seen Matt at all. And I think you're right. Like, flying under the radar just kind of worked well for him. And I thought the one thing that really stood out to me in the final, but in the playoffs in general, is it seemed like the most, for lack of a better term, zen Matt we have ever seen. You know, Matt is a very emotional guy, as we saw after the win, but we've also seen after losses, but we've also seen in the middle of games. Like, if you go back and watch that first Brier final Matt is in, compared to how he handled himself in this one, I don't know what happened in the gap between the trials and now, but this was easily the most calm Matt that we have ever seen on the ice. He just seemed ready for the moment. He didn't seem scared of it. They had their best game of the week yesterday in the final. I mean, they were excellent in the final yesterday as we record this. So yeah, that was what stuck out to me most was Matt just seemed at peace with whatever was going to happen. And I think that helped him get it over the line.
For sure. I always said the words I always used to describe Matt, especially in that big game, high pressure situation, is he just wanted it so bad that it almost let it get the best of him. And I agree 100% with what you said. He just trusted the process more yesterday. He was in the game. He, a couple small misses here and there, but he wouldn't get worked up. He wouldn't dwell on it. And on top of that, coming off the loss, they had just come off a loss. Was it the 1-2 game?
Yeah, they lost the 1-2 game. Yep.
Tough loss to Koe in the 1-2 game. They probably just based on world record and head to head over the past few years, they probably saw Koe in the 1-2 game, a team who's nothing against Kevin Koe. He's Kevin friggin' Koe, but quite a bit lower in the world rankings. Certainly not as high profile, not as much success. Probably expected to win that game, get to the final. He didn't. Had to meet up with the reigning Olympic gold medalist from Canada in the semifinals. Regrouped, got through that one, and like you said, was calm, cool, collected in the final. I know this is cheesy, and we said this about Hasselberg, but he looked like a Brier champion out there. Mm-hmm. He looked so comfortable, and it was just so good to see because, as we said, everyone knew it was coming, and you could just tell Matt probably also knew it was going to come, and that was just the day. When we were talking just with our curling friends in our just group chat, I said, today's the day Matt Dunstone wins the Brier. And that was before the semis. And you could just tell it was his day. Big congrats to him. And what a player Colton Lott is. We just got to point that out too. You talk about flying under the radar. I don't want to say underrated because I don't think anyone's going to say he's not a great player. But just not flashy, just goes about his business, takes care of it, puts his team in a really good position, it seems, after every time his rocks are done. So what an effort from the whole foursome. And I was so pumped to see it.
Yeah, and obviously have to give our flowers to EJ Harnden as well. He said this is his last Brier to go out with a win and to win it with his brother. At the start of this quad, it kind of looked like maybe EJ's career would end without playing with his brother Ryan again. So the fact that they did it together and EJ got to do it in his last Brier, it's a storybook ending that a lot of people don't get in this sport, as we saw with Brad Gushue, and we're going to get to him in a minute. But what a way to go out for EJ, and fantastic run for Matt Dunstone. Congrats to them. I think it's going to be very fun to watch them at Worlds.
After the hug a couple of years ago too, I pointed that out to my wife when EJ was playing with Gushue and they beat Dunstone. And Ryan was hugging his dad, and then EJ joined them. Like, that was an emotional moment. And then just to see them embrace together as Brier champions last night. As I said, John, a lot of onions being chopped. It was flowing in PEI, baby.
There was a lot going on there. We'll have time to preview the men's Worlds, but I think Matt Dunstone going to be in the mix there because similar to the women's Worlds, it's a bit of a strange field. We're not going to see any team that was on the podium at the Olympics for men or women at their respective Worlds. So it's anyone's ball game, as they say. And we're looking at a Team Canada that's going to have a great chance to win the World Championship in Ogden, Utah. Okay, we got to get also to the Brier finalist, Kevin Koe. I was debating tweeting this, but I knew people would take it the wrong way. But my tweet was going to be, curling fans this week were asking the gods for a curling legend and a former Brier champion to turn back the clock, but God turned the wrong knob. And I thought people would be like, what do you mean wrong knob? What's wrong with Kevin Koe? And it was like, I'm just joking. All the fans in St. John's really wanted Brad Gushue to have the week of his life this week. And it's no shade to Kevin Koe, but I was just like, I couldn't believe how good Kevin was this week. It wasn't, I did end up tweeting this, which was just like, it reminded me of when we talked about the US trials, right? Where we were like, Schuster didn't lose it, Casper won it. And it was like that with Kevin this week. It wasn't like, they just got kind of a lucky run of games. Matt Dunstone didn't play great against them. And then Brad Jacobs didn't play great against them in the playoffs. Or like they were getting really good games from teams. And Kevin was he was old Kevin. Like he was making friggin' everything, making shots that didn't even look like they were there. Like that blank triple that he made was absolutely bananas. That thin double for a couple that he made was not like, it was vintage Kevin Koe. It was crazy to see. And his whole team met the moment too. They all played really well. It was just, it was wild to see Kevin Koe back in the Brier final and playing the way that he was playing.
Yeah, it was the Koe dog. It wasn't even Kevin Koe. It was just old school. Yeah, absolutely. And one thing I'll say about that is, we talked about EJ and what a way to go out. And I'm not trying to speculate. I don't know. I actually don't know Kevin very well, but he's 51 years old. So you got to think that if this is if this isn't it for him, it's probably coming, sooner than later. And even though they didn't win, at least if this is Kevin's last year, he can look back at this week and truly, I think, be in peace with the sense that he gave it everything he had. He threw everything at them. He was outstanding like that. Yeah, I think it was like a triple kind of around the horn at the back for 3 or 4 in the round robin, like just ridiculous stuff that most people don't even see. And he just makes look so easy. He just looked so much more dialed in than we've seen him in years. But, we were talking, you had mentioned that at least we got to see EJ and Ryan win together. That's a nice story. But I think just the thought of seeing someone like Kevin Koe, who's given us as Canadian curling fans so much to cheer about over the years, it's not been a great quad for them. It really hasn't. No. And it would just be unfortunate if that was the way Kevin Koe's career ended, because he deserves better. And this week, I know he's a competitor, and I know I'm not stupid and know he would have liked to win. And he's probably just as competitive as ever. But, as fans, at least we can look and say, we got the Koe show this week, which I think a lot of people have been craving for a long time. And I also think we talked about team laws after the Scotties. It kind of, to me, is a little bit similar in our kind of debrief about them in Mississauga, in the sense that if you look at the lineup of that team, like Karek Martin at lead, Sluchinski at second, Tardy at third, Kevin Koe at skip, like that's a good team. That's a very strong team on paper. And we just hadn't seen that big performance out of them this quadrennial. And it was like, they didn't win, but holy shit, they played well. And it was just nice to see Kevin, if this is the last time, see him go out with the respect that he deserves. And I think he can live with that. And if it's not, great. I look forward to seeing more of the Koe, because that was so fun to watch.
Yeah, we're going to get to the team stuff shortly. I am inclined to believe Kevin's going to play at least another year. And I think if, like, let's say he plays 2 more years and it kind of looks like this whole quad looked, and he's in a couple slams, he's out of a couple slams, he doesn't play that great at the Brier. I think it matters less now that at 51 years old, he had this Brier. Like, have we ever seen someone this old be this good at a Brier? I don't think so.
The only thought that came into my head was, and they certainly didn't go as far like in the playoff picture, but was when Wayne Middaugh played that year.
Yeah.
I think it might've been in the bubble. Was it not?
Yeah, it was in the bubble. Yeah.
Yeah. And he made some big shots sort of thing, but
yeah, that was in 2020. So Wayne would have been, similar age. He would have been 50. You would have been like 53.
Yeah. And I just remember social media during that Brier saying how pumped they were to see vintage Wayne. Canadian curling fans, he's certainly a favorite. And it was kind of similar this week. And just a chance that, like you said, he might play one more year. I agree with that. I think he might too, but I don't think he's playing another 10.
No.
So even if it is another year, I think this is just something that he can always kind of take away with him.
Yeah. Yeah. It was an incredible performance, a pleasure to watch. And if that's the last big game we see Kevin Koe play in, what a treat to get one more, very impressive. All right. The other main story, and some might say it was the main story, even though it wasn't who won the Brier. That's usually the main story, but Brad Gushue gets his retirement. He retires in his hometown in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, obviously. A city that has embraced him like no other curler has ever been embraced by a particular city. And obviously, of course, by the whole country. They bow out in the 3-4 game to Brad Jacobs. A few words on how it all shook out and maybe just the career in general of Brad Gushue.
Well, I think even on his last weekend, Brad Gushue would look you in the eye and truly mean it if he said, we were just happy to come forth and be in the playoff picture. Like, he seemed just as competitive as he was 10 years ago or 5 years ago or 20 years ago. And he could still play. Like, Brad Jacobs' comment to him, why the hell are you retiring? I think it was after he made that run triple, run double, and anyway, got rid of all of them. He looked good out there. He looked extremely good. He didn't let the moment, I don't think, take take over. And then you could see when the game was over, reality kind of set in a little bit and the emotions came out. But Brad Gushue, man, that's a big deal. And I hope, the higher ups in the sport are paying attention to this, because this is going to create some challenges, in my opinion, for the sport in general. Brad Gushue's a star. He's not a curling star. He's a star. Curling has lots of curling stars, but he's a mainstream Canadian athletic star who draws a lot of fans, brings a lot of eyeballs, and people pay attention. I know this might shock you, but I'm going to compare it to pro wrestling in a second. Or for a second. But like, if you ask a lot of people, who's your favorite wrestler? Well, I don't watch wrestling. And you say, oh, what about Hulk Hogan? Well, they always know Hulk Hogan. Well, Brad's kind of like that with curling, if that makes sense. You ask a non-curling fan, they know who Brad Gushue is. And what a legacy that is for any athlete, but let alone him coming from Newfoundland and Labrador, like the travel he would have had to do over the years and all the success he's had. And that's, based on his work ethic, just talking to him, and he just would talk about, how he trained, how often he would train, what he would do. He worked his ass off. And the fact that he did that for so long is so impressive. A class act. It's certainly just going to leave a big gap in the game. And, I just hope someone can fill it. In terms of his last event, he obviously wanted to be in the final, but compared to a lot of the other events we saw him this year, I thought the team looked great. Couple shots here and there, they would have got themselves right into that semifinal. But that wasn't the story. And Brad Gushue, I don't think the curling world knows what a loss it is yet.
Well said. I think that in a weird way, it was, if he couldn't win the whole thing, this was the best way for it to happen. Either in this or even the semifinal, because then it's like, it's the same day as the final. Like, it was kind of the perfect, it was almost like he got his own day, it was like that game was in the morning, he got beat, and then you saw that he was able to have his moment. And it was against Brad Jacobs, who didn't need any part of the moment, like, I think if he loses the final, then it's like you're competing with, and we kind of saw that with Jennifer Jones, right? Where it was like Homan won, but like Jennifer Jones got interviewed, and just like, like it was, and that's no one's fault. Like, no. Obviously you have to tell the story. And if you keep winning games, guess what? You get to play in the finals. So, but the way that it went down, I just think, especially in St. John's, I would have felt really badly for Matt Dunstone if he had beaten Gushue in the final. Him and Colton get there first. EJ gets his last. It's such an amazing moment. And then I would argue, not even get to share the moment with Brad. I think it just still becomes Brad's moment. So it felt like it happening in the 3-4 game was almost perfect. It was just like Brad got to have his moment. Brad Jacobs is a team that fully understands that. Obviously, you heard Brad Jacobs say to Brad Gushue, congrats on an amazing career. You're the best ever, which was a beautiful moment between two guys who we learned have played something like 70 games against each other. It was also sort of like a fitting opponent to go out on. It was like, they've played 70 games against each other, and I think the lifetime is like 36-34 in favor of Jacobs. Like, it's, two super tightly matched guys who have played each other so many times. It just, like, it felt sort of poetic. It really felt like it was just a perfect moment. Brad got to enjoy his moment. It didn't affect the rest of the Brier. Still allowed Koe to have his sort of magical moment. Dunstone got to have his winning moment. I think it just, in a weird way, all kind of worked out the way it was supposed to. And I just thought it was so well done. Brian Mudryk, the interview was fantastic, handled the questions perfectly. It was just the whole moment. Everything was done in an exact way that made a lot of sense, that I really, really liked. And I agree with you in that I think the curling world's going to have some reckoning to do in the next couple of years with who is the next star. But I guess that's our job in some ways. Not necessarily you and me, but just the slams, we work for the slams, and that's, I think, going to be the sort of next thing on the docket is who becomes the next. And we should say men's Canadian curling star, because of course Rachel Homan is a huge star on the women's side of the game. But yeah, for the men, it's been Brad Gushue carrying the torch for a while now, and it'll be interesting to see who that torch gets passed to.
Yeah, it's funny. A non-curling fan friend of mine watched that game, and he had messaged me saying, "Does curling have another star like this?" And I said, "No, they don't." He said, "Is there anyone who potentially could be that?" And I said, "Probably Rachel Homan." That's the name that popped into my mind at the moment. But when I worked as the MC on the slams for a little while, and it didn't matter where you were in the country, the moment that you started and from St. John's, like the place was on their feet. It was just a different level of volume and passion, and just the definition of a true babyface fan favorite.
Yeah.
And
babyface, Robbie means
sorry, good guy. Yeah,
good guy. Yeah. Although Brad Gushue does have a young looking face.
He does. I'll give him that. Yeah. So does Mark Nichols.
Yeah.
But I don't think. I don't think Brad is going to be absent from the game.
No,
I think he'll certainly still be around the game. Whether it's
he's going to take our job, he's going to be a commentator. I mean, he should be if he's He
did for Sportsnet a few years ago, and
he was very good at it. Yeah. So I hope that's where he ends up. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. But wish you all the best, Brad. Well deserved, and a great job to all those in St. John's as well. It was they poured their heart out and showed their appreciation. So job well done.
Yeah. And, I will say, I think I've talked about this before, but, Brad, and he kind of mentioned it this week, and, he said it to me when I went to St. John's to interview him for Broomgate, and he kind of talked about how he can't really go out in St. John's. Like, his wife does the grocery shopping, and when they go out for dinner, he knows it's going to be a big thing because everybody's going to want a picture. And I was kind of like, yeah, okay, buddy. And then when we were on the ground in St. John's for the Slam last year, it was unlike anything I've ever seen. He is legitimately one of Newfoundland, if not it's like him and Alan Doyle are like Newfoundland's most famous people. Like it's actually insane. And obviously he gets attention across the country, but like he can go out for dinner in Toronto, and it's not the end of the world for him. But it was unlike anything I've ever seen. He is legitimately probably their most successful athlete ever in Newfoundland and Labrador, and they treat him like that. And it is a sight to see. It's unbelievable. And yeah, it was the perfect way to go out. And I think we've talked about Kevin Koe's quad. Like, yes, obviously Kevin got his great moment in this Brier, but let's say Kevin, this Brier went sort of the way the rest of the quad had went, where this Brier, he goes 4-4 and misses the playoffs. I think Brad never wanted that. Brad never wanted the idea of like, I'm going to kind of struggle my way through a couple quads to maybe get another moment. Like, he wanted to go out as close to the top of his ability as he could.
Yep.
And I think we're not going to see him again, is what I'm saying, on the ice. I think, we've seen it in curling. Oh, I'm retiring. Remember Mark Nichols retired when he was like 29, 15 years ago he retired, and now he's played for, but Brad, we're not going to have that moment with Brad. He's like, I want to go out in a way where everyone remembers me as being one of the greats. And I think that was the other thing that he accomplished this week. He had a really good week from a shot making perspective, and I'm thrilled for him that he got to go out like that.
Yeah, Brad Gushue is not the guy who gets a call to come out of retirement. Brad Gushue is the guy who calls other people, that forces them out of retirement because he's calling. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
All right, we're going to get to some team change news. Just if there's anything quick, Robbie, from the rest of the field you wanted to touch on at the 2026 Montana's Brier.
No, I mean, it was other than Koe, I thought we might see McEwen in that slot, or not in the final, but in the final four, if you will.
Yep.
And wasn't the the case. The one team that I really liked and paid attention to was Ontario, Jaden King.
Yeah.
I'd never seen them before. I just really liked the way they played. They're obviously young, not a lot of experience. But the thing I liked about them is, and I know it's a little different living in Ontario versus, where I grew up sort of thing, but, you could break your leg tomorrow and never go back to the Brier, never curl again. And it just looked like, they had a lot of success. I think they were 5-3 after the round robin, and had a chance to keep going and obviously lost. But it looked like they just took it all in and really, really appreciated where they were at the moment. Lost some close games, but I just liked the way they played, made some big shots. Just a solid team. I look forward to see. They were the team that kind of jumped out at me out of all the I was going to say newbies, but all the new teams in the Brier. To me, they were the ones that just kind of looked like, oh, okay. I like the way they play. I think there's a lot of talent and a little bit more experience and being in that situation under their belt. I think that team could go far. So kudos to them. And PEI played with 3. So that's all I'm saying about that.
Wonderful.
I was trying to dodge that one.
No.
You're going to pepper me with that one, but
no. I'll just let it stand. No,
thank you.
No problem. Now, yes, 100%, Robbie, agree with all of that. Don't have much to add. Nice to see Braden Calvert have a good week. Talking of young teams that are on the rise. Braden a little older than Jaden, but still under 30 and has a lot of runway left in this sport. I think he's a guy that hasn't necessarily gone crazy with curling. Doesn't really play outside of Manitoba too much. Obviously, I believe he has his own farm, so got a busy life. And of course, him and his partner Kelsey Calvert, they had their first child last year. So lots going on for Braden, but I think a guy that a lot of curlers would tell you has the ability to be one of the very best players in the country. And I sort of am hoping this run for him sort of spurs him on to maybe just go a little bit harder, only because he's great, and I'd love to see more. All right. It is that time, Robbie. It's curling free agency season. People who know me from my Twitter know that I've been known to throw a few rumors around as my alter ego XOXO Gossip Curl. And we're going to get to the Canadian changes in a minute, but we had kind of talked all year, it was obvious to see at the slams, but even in the world curling standings, the Korean women's program is becoming a problem. And I mean that positively. They have a ton of very, very good teams. And we were kind of wondering, because they're all quite young, right? So we were all kind of wondering in this off season, are they going to maybe mix up the squads, give the younger teams some veteran power? And it turns out they were willing to basically break up all of their teams because, the South Korean women's picture has totally changed. So I'm going to walk you through it, Robbie, as well as our listeners, because I know not everybody is super up on the happenings of South Korean curling. But some huge news. So basically, it starts with Eunjung Kim. So the Garlic Girls, as we know from 2018, they won the silver medal in their home country in Pyeongchang, and they had a phenomenal run over the last 8 years. And then we saw this year, it's sort of a little different, right? The Korean Olympic trials are in June. So they knew in June they were not going to the Olympics, and this year they didn't really play. And so they dropped down to number 35 in the world, which is about as low as we've ever seen them. And they're all veterans. They're all in their mid-30s. And they decided, that's it. We're done. We're breaking up. And so what we're actually seeing, it makes sense to think of things through their team, because their team breaking up has kind of made a bunch of different teams, really. So the one thing we do know also, Eunji Kim, the Olympic rep, we're going to see them at the Women's Worlds coming up here in a week. They're staying together. So those are the two easiest things to think about, because I also know it's hard. We're talking about 20 players and like 15 of them, their last name is Kim. So I also know that poses some challenges as well, trying to remember who and which Kim is that. And it can be very confusing. But yes, so Eunji Kim staying together. At least we think. That hasn't been officially announced, but based on everyone else changing, I assume that that's what's happening. So Eunjung Kim breaks up. So their front end of Cho-hee and Sunyoung Kim is now joining up with Sungyoon Ha's back end. So Ha is a team, Robbie, I know you've commentated some of their games. We've seen them in the slams. Very, very impressive young team. So that's Sungyoon Ha and Hee-rin Kim are joining up with Cho-hee and Sunyoung or Sunny Kim. So that's a complete team. That's a set team. And I think that's going to be a really good team. I kind of love Robbie. It sort of reminds me almost of Matt Dunstone, where you sort of marry like a veteran front end to a sort of younger back end. I kind of love that.
Yeah, it's kind of against the grain, but it works. Well, it obviously worked for Dunstone this week. So, and I think just adding that experience will be big for Team Hot. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, I wanted you to weigh in a little bit because I think it's great, right? I think they're great sweepers. I think they bring just a little bit more experience in those bigger situations. I think that is going to be really good for them. Then the other member of that team that we're going to see move on to a top team is Kyung-ae Kim. So she's been the longtime third for Eunjung. She is joining the now back-to-back world junior champion, Bo-bae Kong. So Bo-bae Kong's entire team is staying together, but they're going to move one of their players down to alternate, and then Kyung-ae Kim is going to slot in at third. So Bo-bae Kong, maybe this is a little more traditional, Robbie. Bo-bae Kong, who's 20 years old, is one of the world's top teams. We saw her make the playoffs at a slam this year. As I say, back-to-back world champions, is now getting the veteran Kyung-ae Kim joining her at the back end. Feels like a great move to me.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime you can add that, like if you look at that team, they just won the World Juniors too, did they not?
Yeah, back-to-back. Yeah.
Back-to-back World Juniors. Yeah, and I think... well, I know they were in Tahoe. I don't know if
they were in Tahoe.
But I don't know if they made the quarters or they had to play. Long story short, they ran into Rachel Holman.
Quarters in Tahoe. Yeah.
Yeah. And they played Holman.
Yeah.
So number one in the world, very tough team. If it was someone else, luck of the draw, who knows? They could have went even farther in that.
Yeah. Beat Anderson in the tiebreaker 9-0.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, my point is, I think if you look at a team like that, they're so dominant within their own age group. The only thing they're missing is, if you look at it as an outsider, it's experience. It's that big game women's experience, and what a way to bring that in, especially at third. Bo-bae doesn't strike me as someone who lets her emotions get the best of her. She seems very...
No, I believe her nickname in Korea is the Ice Princess, I believe. I've been calling her the Spider because she looks like a spider when she comes out. She's got her elbows super high. It kind of looks like she's got 8 legs. But yes, from what I've heard, I believe that is her nickname in Korea, is the Ice Princess, both because she's very good on the ice, but also very icy on the ice as well. Very, very calm and cool out there for sure.
Stone cold.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I think that's a good move for that team, because I think they recognize that if they want to grow, they need to add somebody who's been there, who's been in every scenario that they hope to get to before. Not that this team wouldn't have gotten there probably on their own, but it maybe, who knows, it'll help them get there a little quicker and more consistently. What I think is fun to see out of a country like Korea, who's really exploded in terms of depth, it kind of reminds me of Canada like 25 years ago when the Olympics was really, becoming such a major part of our game. We were always the country known for our depth and our amount of curlers and curling clubs. And I guess what I'm trying to get at is when, you saw like Martin get rid of his team and he brought in John, Morris, Mark, and Ben, like the super team, if you will. Ben moving from Saskatchewan to Calgary, making that commitment. Korea, it almost seems like now they have a lot of really good teams, but they're recognizing that to be that dominant number one in the world, they're going to have to do something different and put some super teams together. So you see that with Kim, retiring, that freed up, obviously, the front end, everybody. But just a chance to really go the next level. So instead of, having 4 or 5 Korean women's teams in a slam, they're recognizing that, it's the next step is to have 3 to the 4 final, like say semi-finalists from Korea, if that makes sense. It just seems to me that they're making the effort to just go from really good to almost try and dominate the sport, if that makes any sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. I mean, we've only seen one Slam win for a Korean team. So given how many Korean teams we've seen in the Slams over the years, we've only seen one win. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Robbie. And I think you have to look at even just this Olympics, right? Like Eunji Kim missing the playoffs wasn't the Olympics they wanted. They haven't won a world championship either. So I think you're right. It's thinking about, okay, we have good teams. We've got lots of teams playing in the Slams. How do we maximize them? And I kind of like this other move they made. So Sung Yoon Ha and her third Heerin Kim, as I said, are teaming up at the front end of Eunjung Kim. So now what do you do with the rest of the team? They actually took sort of the number 30 ranked skip in the world, Yubin Park, and gave her all of Sung Yoon Ha's players. So they kind of identified, you're 30 in the world, you're pretty good, but like Yubin might be the best player on that team. So let's develop her and try to bring her along. And so, so she's picking up the other 3. So Sung Yoon Ha had a 5-person team.
Yep.
So she's picking up the other 3 members of Sung Yoon Ha's team. So that'll be another and they're all under the age of 25. Like that's another very good young team in Korea. And then the final one, which I just think is very cool, because I got to spend a bit of time with her last year. I got to know Eunjung Kim. I went out for lunch with her and Anna Hasselborg for a feature that we did for the Grand Slam of Curling. And it was her first ever English interview. And she was really, really nice and great to get to know. She is going back to her hometown and skipping a just out of juniors team that's ranked like 100th in the world. Hometown of Wheesong, Korea. And it's just, I saw her Instagram post, and again, it's Instagram translate or whatever. So the translation's not exactly perfect, but basically said like, I could have retired, but I wanted to kind of go back to my hometown and give something to the young curlers and try to help them learn and whatever. So I don't know that we're necessarily going to see Eunjung on tour. They're going to have to, or I mean, like at the Slams and stuff, like they're really going to have to work for it, coming from being ranked like 100th in the world. But I do just think what a cool way to go out and a fun legacy to leave in your hometown.
Yeah. And what a classy move to recognize, she'd be in her mid 30s.
Yeah.
And Olympic silver medalist, great success over the years. What a way to give back to the sport. Especially in a, Korea, one tip of the cap I'll give to them in general is they really invested in curling. Like you can tell.
Oh yeah.
Just the growth and the skill that's coming out of South Korea is mind blowing. And so, Kim has obviously been the recipient of a lot of that and has been a major part of that, recognizing that, okay, they've been good to me. Now it's time to kind of give back to the sport and grow the next generation. And what an opportunity too for that young team to get a chance to play with, such an experienced skip. I'm assuming she'll be skipping.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I would assume so for sure. Yeah. So it's Suyun Park is the team that she's joining. And I think is going to, Suyun Kim, my apologies. The third or now second is Hanbyul Park. It's if their last name isn't Kim, it's Park. So you're also trying to, but
like Gallant and McDonald and PEI.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. I think Eunjung's going to be skipping and then taking over that young Kim team. Going to be very fun to watch. All right, Robbie, it is time to talk about the Canadian team changes. Let's see how much trouble we can get ourselves in. Let's see how many angry texts we can get from curlers blowing up their spot. But look, I'll say this right away. And we saw a few more teams kind of hit the brakes over the last few weeks here. Team Krista Scharf, formerly McCarville, they're calling it quits. 3 of them stepping back. Kendra Lilly still looking to play, but Ashley Sipola, Sarah Potts, Krista Scharf all stepping back. Selena Sturmey staying together. Laurie St. George staying together, but Sarah Daniels is leaving. We've also seen Team Cameron call it quits. Team Armstrong, who are at the Scotties this year, All I will say on the women's side right now, I think from what I'm hearing behind the scenes is everyone's kind of waiting for Carrie because obviously Carrie's got to play in the women's worlds coming up this week. So I do think things are happening behind the scenes, but I think it's a bit of we're waiting for Carrie and also waiting for Caitlin Laws to decide what she's doing, whether she's playing or not playing. It seems to be anyway what's holding this all up, because I think normally you would think right after the Scotties, you get this flood of, okay, yeah, the Scotties is over, so we're done. But I think because Carrie's the team that's at the Worlds, they're obviously not going to announce some kind of breakup before they even go to the Worlds, because I don't think anyone's retiring. That's usually the only way you see it, is someone's retiring, so they'll say, well, I'm retiring after this is over. But I think everyone's kind of waiting to see what happens there, Robbie.
Yeah, I like what you said about Carrie, because that was going to be my comment is, we can talk about the St. George's and the Sharfs and the Armstrongs, but there's nothing they can really do in terms of moving up until, like you said, the Carries, the Rachels say something. I'm not trying to stir the pot there, but they haven't said they're staying together yet. I would assume they would be, but
I'm operating off of that assumption from what I'm hearing, that Team Homan is going to stick together. But again, we've been surprised before, but that has been sort of what I've heard without actually getting any direct confirmation. This is all speculation. This is speculation corner here from John and Robbie. So don't get too mad. We don't actually know anything. We're two guys. We're two guys talking.
Yeah. We're at the bar.
Yeah, exactly.
But I like what you said about Carrie, because that's the team that I think could really, once they make the announcement, if they do decide to separate, that I think will be the start of all the major changes coming in, kind of one after the other, and see where the dominoes fall. The other one is Laws. Who knows what their plans are too. And
exactly.
Now I know we had talked about Laws and Carrie potentially getting together again. Speculation. Don't quote me. But I really think, there's going to be a bomb dropped in the women's teams in Canadian curling in terms of players going everywhere. But I think Carrie's the one, like kind of like the Wile E. Coyote in the cartoons, with the detonator, and until she pushes it down, I think we're kind of at a deadlock until then. But I do think we're going to see a lot of changes. I think also teams are probably, in my opinion, based on, the stats of and results from Canadian teams, I think you're going to see a lot more effort of people trying to stack teams and really try to level up, kind of like we talked about with
Bruce. You have to. Who's at the top?
That's my point, is you have to. We're at the point.
Rachel's at the top. You have no choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And how many times have, the number of Canadian women's teams been doubled by, Korea or Japanese teams that slams this year, which if you would now, it's not a big deal. But if you told us that 20 years ago, we'd laugh.
Yeah.
But here we are. And it's just the Olympics, man. They changed the sport. And, but I think there's going to be some wild changes. I think this conversation would be a lot easier if it was like the week after Steinbach and it was around, in the locker rooms, in the hallways, kind of chatting. But it's just a lot easier to be in the loop. So I can't exactly say who's going where, but I think you're going to see a lot of higher profile names of that kind of tier 2 join up.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the one, so I think, as you said, got to look out for Carrie. What happens there? Is Val leaving, or is the rest of the team leaving? Who knows? As you said, I think Caitlin is a major factor in this. Obviously, has 2 young kids at home. Is she going to keep going? If she is, obviously, like you said, the potential of her partnering up with Carrie looms large. I also think we saw a post last week from Connor Negevin saying that he's taking a step back from competitive curling because him and Selena are expecting twins. Congratulations to them. I think, do you congratulate people for twins, or do you just kind of pat them on the shoulder and say it's going to be okay?
Good luck.
Good luck. Yeah. But it sort of seems like the implication there anyway from Connor's post, if I'm reading between the lines, was he's retiring or taking a step back, I should say, to allow Selena to keep going. And so, they're going to have 3 kids. That's going to be obviously a lot to manage. So
under
that's
3.
Exactly. So
trust me, it's tough.
So that's what I'm thinking is there. And I wonder if we see Selena try to skip. I think that's definitely something that I think is possible. Again, I don't know that. You look around and you think of, how many top skips really are there in Canada right now? Like people where you look at them and you go, yeah, maybe they have a chance to challenge Rachel Homan. And we've seen Selena over the years when she's filled in at skip look very good, like in terms of throwing fourth, I mean, because obviously she skipped Laws all year this year. So she's a great strategist. Like Laws leveled up this year with Selena calling the game. And we've seen her throw last for Tracy Fleury and have success when Tracy was away. And then when Caitlin was away, we also saw Selena have success throwing last. So I wonder if when this all shakes out, if Selena's not going to end up skipping. And again, that's just me talking. I have no idea if that's happening, but I just wonder if that becomes, like you said, Laws was a tier 2 team this year, really. Like we saw them in the tier 2 final. So in terms of, you talk about tier 2 players maybe consolidating, I wonder if Selena, if she does decide to skip, kind of picks up some of those tier 2 type players. We saw Erin Pincott on the bench for them at the Scotties. Is that a name in the mix? Laura Walker said on broadcast in Steinbach that she's maybe looking to get back in the 4-player game. Is she in the mix? What does Jocelyn do if Caitlin's not sticking around? So I just sort of wonder if, that's all going to kind of work itself out over the next few weeks, but that could be something we see on the women's side of the game. On the men's side, I think the announcements are going to come pretty fast and furious, but I think the men's was interesting, Robbie, because similar to Carey, I think everybody was waiting for Brad Jacobs because over the last couple of years, Mark and Ben in particular, have kind of told anybody who would listen, we're done at the end of this quad. And then Mark did an interview with Sportsnet's Christina Rutherford and said, don't expect any retirement announcements from our team. So again, I think both Mark and Ben have made it clear they don't want to go another quad, but I do wonder, Robbie, if they're going at least another year. I mean, it certainly seems like they are. I don't even wonder. It seems like they're going another year. So now what does that do to the men's picture in Canada?
Yeah, and good on them for going another year too. Like I think that team is really just kind of coming into their own, or they did this year. Like they were really good last season, and since Brad took over. But holy crap, like the last half of this year, they were like dynamite. Like I think, in my opinion, they were the most dominating team in Canada.
Oh yeah,
and like Dunstone too, like excellent team. That's not a knock to them.
Yeah, sure.
But I mean, if you look at them in one season, they won the trials. They won the Olympic gold. And then they flew back, and 3 days later, they were on the ice at the Brier.
Yep.
And lost in the semifinals to the champions.
Yeah.
It's pretty damn impressive.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised, and good on them. And I can't say I've ever been in a situation where I've been on the Olympic team and had to decide if I was playing next year. But I can imagine there's a lot of money involved too for the players, and that's got to be a big factor.
And opportunities too, right?
Right.
You get chances to speak and go to different events and whatever. And
that's what I mean. Well deserved. Like they deserve that. They earned the right. So
yeah, totally.
So I hope they stick together for another year. Why? They're all in amazing shape. They're all throwing it as well or better than they ever had. So yeah, I don't think we're going to, I'm not surprised to hear what Mark said, that there's no announcements coming out from them. And I agree. I think the men's side more so than the women's side, we might have one of those scenarios where there's some teams that are put together and then some changes coming towards the end of next season.
Well, who isn't going to want to play with Brad Jacobs and Brett Gallant? Right. Like if it is both Mark and Ben that go, obviously I'm sure Tyler Tardy is thinking to himself, well, what's the thing I do next year before I maybe get the call from Cups? And I will say, and Robbie, we're going to talk about this when we get to the speculation being over, but it was announced yesterday. And I think this is also a key in the potential retirement or lack of retirement announcement from Team Jacobs. All the slams are within 8 weeks of each other next year. So 9 weeks, right? So the slam schedule got announced yesterday, and all 5 slams are before Christmas to accommodate Rock League. Ben has kind of said he doesn't want to play Rock League. Like, he kind of came out and said, my career's been too long. I don't want to do Rock League. So I think if you're Ben and Mark, you're kind of looking at it like, well, we really only have to play 5 slams. Like, maybe they'll play 1 tour event or whatever. They usually play the Okotoks one because ATB Financial is their sponsor, and they also sponsor the Okotoks event. So they usually play in that one. So maybe they play that, and then they only have to play 5 slams in 8 weeks or 9 weeks. Then you would essentially get January and February off because they're not going to play in Rock League. And then you show up to the Brier, like they're going to get a Brier wild card for sure. So then you show up to the Brier. And so really, it's not as much of a commitment as it might have been in past years where, okay, there's only 3 slams before Christmas, so we probably have to play another 2 events in a club. Then we got to play another slam in January. Then we go through the Brier, maybe the Worlds. Then there's another slam in April. Like, it's sort of the schedule, I think, also allows for them to do that. And so I think that's also part of the reason why we may not see them step away immediately. So that begs the question, Robbie, what is happening? I think the obvious slot, if you want to talk about top teams, is EJ Harnden's. We know he's going to be retiring. I would imagine now that Dunstone has won the Brier, Ryan Harnden's not going anywhere.
No,
you need to, I don't think he was anyway, but you have to keep 3 players to keep your spot as Team Canada next year at the Brier. I'm going to go ahead and guess that they're going to keep that. So who ends up at second for Team Dunstone?
Well, I don't know. That's a good question. Tyler Tardy's name popped up, but who knows what he was 5th, obviously, for Jacobs. So maybe he's waiting around to see what happens there. But there's a lot of good young players around that they could pick from. When I think of like potential free agents, the name I always think of is Tyler Tardy because, and in fairness, before this week, I was just assumed that team was going to break up. Yeah, I mean, I think it's too premature for me to try and guess an exact name of who that is. But I think it's going to be someone, on the younger side, probably more closer to Colton and Matt in age. Whether they go locally or bring someone in, in my opinion, I'd just be bullshitting if I tried to guess a name right now.
Well, they'll have the option because they are Team Canada, so they won't be bound by residency, at least not for next year. So they can bring in whoever they want. The name that popped out to me is Colton Flash. I think we were kind of thinking that maybe Mike McEwen would be done after this year anyway, and not retiring necessarily, but just that team would be done. And I would imagine missing the playoffs at the Brier probably cinches that. So you got 4 free agents there. I think Colton fits the bill. Great hitter, great sweeper, right? Like, I mean, if you're losing EJ's sweeping, you're going to want to bring
put a bull in there.
Yeah, exactly. And Colton is as good. If EJ's the best, which I think some people do think EJ is the best, Colton is also in that conversation, right? So you bring Colton in to play true second. I could see that being a fit. Obviously, we saw Jake Horgan behind the bench for them at the Brier as their alternate. I would assume he'll be going to the Worlds with them as well. But I kind of think that this is because sometimes people will say to me when I get teams right, they're like, oh, well, you must have had insider information. How'd you figure that out? No, sometimes it's just a case of like being a curling detective, and so my theory is I think the Horgans are going to play with Brendan Botcher. I think Brendan's going to go back to skipping. And the reason I think that is because if you look at how all of the men's teams announcements shook out, well, they haven't shaken out. We're here on the Monday after the Brier. No one has said anything other than retirements, except for Team Epping, who came out and they said, yep, we're not going to be together next year. And I know they missed the Brier, but why would they go early? Right? Like if Jake and Tanner, were like, because Epping was a good team. Like that's a team that could have stayed together. Yep. So in my mind, they weren't going to break up unless there was already a team set. And who was one of the only free agent skips available at the time that they said they were leaving Team Epping? It was Brendan Botcher. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Again, like I say, I don't know that for sure. I did weirdly have people tell me they saw Botcher and the Horgans and Jeff Walker practicing together in Toronto. This is what happens when you're XOXO Gossip Girl. People just send you, they'll be like, hey, I went down to the whatever. I was at High Park this afternoon and those 4 curlers were playing together. Do you think that's anything? And I go, interesting, maybe. You know? But yeah, again, I'm not basing that on anything. I don't know that for sure. That's just a guess. But I do believe, I don't believe, but I think that could potentially be a match.
Yeah. And the only name, though, John, that's popping out at me in that whole situation is Mark Nichols, because he hasn't said he's not playing either. And he's certainly in the back 9 of his career, but that guy can still friggin' play with anyone. And we haven't heard anything from him, obviously. But so that's why when you brought up Botcher, it was Jeff and Mark's name that have immediately popped into my mind. And I kind of thought, in my opinion, too, like I know we talked about that team with Brad's retirement, but I thought that Brad and Brendan looked as comfortable with each other as they ever have at the Brier this year.
Yes, I agree.
And I guess what I'm trying to get at is, was there something happening with that team where Walker, Nichols, and Botcher just kind of became, just grew into a more experienced team with each other, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So I thought maybe that would pursue, because Mark is a third, like one of the greatest thirds of all time.
Oh yeah.
And Jeff is Jeff. Good is not even an appropriate word to use for him at lead. He's outstanding and just a great teammate. So I'd kind of had visions of maybe the 3 of them, and maybe they do a 5-person thing. Who knows?
Yeah. No, for sure. I think there's definitely room to speculate on that also. I think, Mark Nichols is interesting. I kind of feel like I've said this before, and again, haven't talked to Mark, but it kind of feels like he's in that situation where, I don't think Mark is going to go play for like the 40th ranked skip in the world. I think it's going to be completely team dependent. Like, could he end up in the Dunstone free agency slot as a second? That thought crossed my mind as well. But yeah, I think he's the guy that he's only going to go for the right situation. Otherwise, I think you'll see him either take next year off or announce retirement fully. But again, he's a guy that if he does want to still keep playing, and we know he's in amazing shape. If he wants to keep playing, he's the guy who could take a year off, see where the dust settles. Like, is he a guy that Brad Jacobs gives a call to in a year? Go from Mark Kennedy to Mark Nichols.
That's a pretty smooth transition.
Exactly. So it's going to be very interesting to follow along, but certainly the top teams here are all going to be making some moves. John Epping, I've also wondered, does he go back to Ontario and look at some young players? Does he look at Sam Moybrook? Does he look at Jaden King and think, maybe I can help bring these guys along? We also know with Reed Carruthers' retirement, BJ Neufeld's name is out there. Does he reunite with Mike McEwen? Do they kind of get the band back together? Does BJ find his way onto John's team? We don't know what Rylan Kleider's team is doing. So that's some intriguing young pieces that could potentially be out there if they split up. So I think now that the Brier's over, we're going to see some movement, Robbie, and it's going to be very, very exciting. Last things last. I don't know. I always like to say that. We announced yesterday, the curling group has announced a format change with the Grand Slams. They are now going to look similar to past years, where teams are going to get in based on their World Curling Tour rankings. However, for the first time ever, we are going to see WCT events, World Curling Tour events, as satellite qualifiers for slams. So I detailed this yesterday in a video for the Grand Slam of Curling. There was a bunch of news releases. So if you don't know what we're talking about, take a second, either go watch that video or go read about it. But Robbie, that is the case. We're going to see some of the top events on tour now serve as qualifiers for Slam. So it'll be, if you win that event, you qualify. If the winner of that event has already qualified for the Slam, it'll go to the finalist and so on down the playoff list. But yeah, this is the first time we've ever seen this. We've never had events where a win gets you into a Slam. Your thoughts when you heard that news?
I really like it. I think it's, and I like it for a few different reasons. Number one is I think it's good for not just the Slams, but I think it's also healthy for curling in general. It just adds a little bit more prestige, more stakes on the line at those high profile WCT events. So, I think that just, especially after a couple of years of it going and word spreads, I think that will just draw more attention to the event. You might get more fans involved. It just puts more pressure on the players. You're not just playing for money, not just playing for points, but a direct entry into a Slam. And I think it's a great way for younger teams to potentially get into a Slam, especially ones based on geographic, or for those teams, who face more challenges geographically. Like for when I played with Casey to PEI, like we were taking 3 flights anywhere we went, right? Like usually Charlottetown, Halifax, Toronto, wherever. Or we'd get off in Toronto and drive. So it was just impossible to get to everything. So it was just a little bit tougher to accumulate points. And I think that if teams who really wanted to have a different schedule, they can identify a few events, pick them, work hard, make your plan, and go give yourself a chance to get in. It kind of reminds me of the old skins game in
where they used to have all the regional qualifiers. Right.
Exactly. And, in PEI, we like to talk about the past quite a bit. But I still hear so many great stories about, the event in Florenceville, New Brunswick. That was the qualifier in the East. So I think it's great. I think it gives the players more to play for. I think it will attract higher quality teams to those satellite events.
Yeah,
make for a better product on the ice, which hopefully translates into to more interest in the general public, bringing more fans and just giving a little bit more prestige to the game.
Yeah, I think, our CEO, Nick Sulsky, always says a rising tide lifts all boats. It kind of feels like that's what's happening here. As you said, I think it revitalizes some of the World Curling Tour events that are participating. Like, I think you are going to see teams go in these events that maybe wouldn't otherwise. I also really like what you said about the regionality of it. I think the committee has really tried to put the qualifier events near the Slams that they are
affiliated with.
Affiliated with. Yeah. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. For example, Thunder Bay, right? It's going to be the women's spiel in North Bay and the men's spiel in Sault Ste. Marie that are the qualifiers for the Thunder Bay Slam. So yes, obviously you are going to get some top teams that are going to be willing to go to North Bay and Sault Ste. Marie to be in those events. But if you're a team that's in your region or close to your region, you're going to have a chance to qualify for a Slam. And I think that is really awesome. It's the same thing in BC, like the event in Vernon, which has been around. Like when I played, I played in the Vernon, the Prestige Hotels Classic. I've played in, 10 times at least. Like that was a marquee event on the calendar for BC teams.
Yep.
And now that's going to qualify teams for the Victoria Slam. And so I kind of just love, and same thing with Medicine Hat, like events in Okotoks are going to qualify teams for the Slam in Medicine Hat. So I do love that idea. And I know people say, because part of it is that we're eliminating the tier 2s, right? Mm-hmm. So you're not going to have tier 2 events at the Grand Slams anymore, other than they're going to do the Wheelchair Invitational like they did last year, which is amazing. And they're also going to do a U21 Slam in Medicine Hat. So I also think that's great. But people will say, oh, you're getting rid of the tier 2s. But one of the complaints I heard last year, Robbie, like we upped it to 3 tier 2s last year. But the first thing was those tier 2s didn't get you direct entry into a Slam.
Exactly.
Right? It used to be you won the tier 2, that got you a direct entry into a Slam. But because there was 3, they decided not to do that last year. But then also teams were telling me, like, you know, if we're a tier 2 team and we're getting invited to all 3 of these tier 2 slams, that's a lot of travel. That's a lot of expense, right? Because the slams are not, they're all over the place, right? Like our tier 2s last year were in London, they were in Saskatoon, and they were in where's the other place I'm thinking of? Nisku. So you know, when you're talking about, oh, I got to go to 3 different provinces and I got to fly all over the place, like sponsorship for teams that are in that kind of, you know, 30 to 50 range on tour, like you're not dealing with a lot of sponsorship dollars there. So you're kind of saying, well, you got to play your slate of local spiels that you would usually play to get games and to get points and get into provincials or whatever. But then you're also going to get on a plane 3 times and go to these tier 2s. Like, it was just, I think that was something that teams really measured out, and we had teams turn down tier 2s last year because of that. So I think that, yeah, it is a really, really cool system. As a guy who was basically a tier 2 curler my whole life, the idea that I could know before the year that there was going to be 10 events on the calendar where I could go and I might have a chance to get a spot into a slam. I just think it's such a good thing. It's really good for those events. It's really good for the slams in general. We've talked about wanting new faces at slams too, Robbie, right? Like you can't get the slam experience until you get the slam experience. And so I think, you know, bringing new faces and new names into the slam tour, like Jaden King at this year's Brier, you know, it's like you want these young teams, you want them to start their story. We want to be able to follow them from, oh, they won a qualifier, got into a slam, then they got pasted at the slam, but they got that experience. And then maybe we see them a year later and they go 1-3. And, you know, like we want to be following them on their journey. And I feel like this is such a great way to do that.
Oh, agree. 100% agree. And it's just a nice way too, for the teams to be able to plan their season, like you said, you know, all over the place. And yeah, I think it just adds a lot of excitement too for the sport in general. Let's be honest, curling's like, it can be stale at times. And I think that, you know, if you're if the Shorty Jenkins or something is going on, you know, it's a slam qualifier, I think that word will get around. It'll create a buzz with the club members, but not just that, the community. And it's just good for the game. It's good for the teams. Like you said, a great way for those, because there's a lot of good young teams that we just don't know about it, but they just don't make that kind of jump into the next level. And what a pathway for them. So it's going to be fun to see. And then it's going to be fun to watch them at the slams as well.
Yeah. So a huge change, but an extremely fun change, and one that we're looking forward to next year. Again, if you want all the details on that, you can head to the grandslamofcurling.com. Also, tickets will start to be available for the slams next year now that the dates and locations have been announced. So if we're coming near you and you want to come check out a slam, we're going to be in Victoria, we're going to be in Kingston, we're going to be in Thunder Bay, we're going to be in Sydney, Nova Scotia, we're going to be in Medicine Hat, Alberta. If you're anywhere in the vicinity, it's going to be a great time. So check it out at GSOCtickets.com. That'll have all your ticket links that you need. And of course, Rock League tickets are available still for April now, so you can get those at rockleague.com or at GSOCtickets.com. Check all of that out. Thank you so much. I know that this was a jam-packed episode, but obviously there's a ton going on in the world of curling right now. Robbie and I will be back soon. I may be back with an interview as well. Maybe we'll get, I know we talked about having Ben Heebs on the show, maybe Matty D. Who knows? I don't know. There's lots going on right now. So we'll get another interview. I know a lot of people love the Emma interview, as did I. If you haven't checked that out, it was really great. Emma kind of talking about their journey to Olympic bronze and also the whole Scotties situation.
Spicy.
It was spicy. It was spicy. It was great. So yeah, so check that out. Thank you again to Goldline Curling for presenting this episode and bringing it to you. As always, check out their end of season sale at goldlinecurling.com. If you want to watch a video of this episode, it's available on our YouTube. It's just Broom Brothers. Search it on YouTube. You'll find us. And you can do that on any social media as well. Just type in Broom Brothers. Give us a follow. If you like the pod, you can also rate and review it on whatever podcast app you're listening to this pod on. That helps us a great deal in the algorithms and everything. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you back here very soon. Enjoy the Women's Worlds, everybody. Goodbye.